I'm about to tell you one of the most profound near-death experience stories maybe you've ever heard, because it's so detailed. Now we're in this beautiful crystal theater, and on the crystals, the crystals are reflecting the universe. The universe is combustion. It's showing you how life begins. It showed me everything, how life starts. It was magnificently beautiful. And you could see the nebulous through the crystals reflecting off wide pieces of crystal. I'm not talking about little crystals like people wear. It's almost like trees of crystal. It was beautiful. And took me to a place that was so horrible, Heather. It would make you cry. You've seen people living off each other. They would kill for a bottle of water. You've seen cities burning. I've seen this in the Hall of Events. I said, what is this? Is this the end of the world? Now, they take me from this total disaster, cities burning, people living off each other, no water, no food, no nothing, into this beautiful utopian area that people are caring, service, loving, giving of themselves more and more and more. And they said to me, Bill, you have choices.
This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, and welcome to my guest, Bill Tortorella. Hello, Bill.
Hi, Heather. How are you this afternoon?
I am great. It is so wonderful to see you again. We just met, and it really was fun meeting you. You're such a fantastic person, and I'm so excited today to share you with my audience.
Yeah, that was great out in Atlanta with the show.
Yeah, Peter Alessandria had a movie premiere here. I was also going to ask you, I know the IONS conference is coming up. Are you going to be attending that?
Yes, I am.
Yay!
I'll be there, and hopefully I'll get to talk to everybody and meet you again. It was fun meeting you the other night. I know we didn't have that much time to talk because the audience kept us busy for at least, hour and a half after the show was over.
They did, but we're going to have lots of time to talk today, so that's great. I do want to mention, too, we just mentioned the IONS conference. For anybody watching, it's the International Association for Near-Death Studies. They have a conference every year. I go. I'm excited. Bill is going to go this year. This year, it's, August 27th through the 31st. It's in Chicago. If you go, make sure you come up and say hello. And you're going to find about 1,000 people there that are like-minded like you. So it's really great. And lots of great speakers.
Wonderful.
Yeah, Bill, I think there's like Raymond Moody this year and Bruce Grayson, who are kind of powerhouses in the field, and Mark Anthony, Carolyn Miss. They're keynote speakers. But as you know, there's so many speakers. You won't get a chance to go to them all because they're constantly having new speakers.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
I think it'll be a good time.
But Bill, I'm also looking forward to having you share your story because you have a really interesting one. You saw and learned a lot on the other side. And
yes, I did.
Why don't you take us to the day that you had your illness and that you died? I believe it was in 1994.
It was 1994. We were at Tucson, Arizona. I was doing one of my trade shows out there. It's in February. So in February, bad cold and flu season, that's running around all over the country. But this year, killer flu was running around. The day I got there to set up at the show, there was already people coughing all over the place. And the show is so massive. This was the biggest gem and jewelry show in the world. And like I said, when we got there, people from all over the world come. The reason why, because they buy their rough cut stones there, emeralds, diamonds, things like that. I wasn't selling that. I was selling sterling silver and my watch collection. I had a big watch collection with about 700 styles of watches for men and women. And so the first day went by great. We were all set up, and the next day the show started out. The days were great. The first couple of days, the lady across the booth from us, she was sick, terribly sick from the first day we got there. On I think it was the third day, she just fell down to the floor. So back 20 years prior to that, because I was 42 then at the show, 20 years prior to that, I was a paramedic in Miami. So I went running over to make sure she was all right and make sure her airway was good and she was breathing properly and everything. I picked her up and put her in my lap. She was so hot. I mean, her fever, it was ridiculous. It must have been 104, 105, or something like that. So I stood with her, just cleared her airway, making sure she was fine until the paramedics got there. Then I, transferred her over to them, of course. But I was fine up until that night. That night of the show, I started to get so sick. It was some kind of, what it was, it wound up being some kind of bacterial infection running around. We didn't know if it was virus infection, neither did the medical people, because it hit everybody so fast. The medical people in the city didn't know. That night, I started to get sick. My throat was swollen up to, it looked like a big football player's throat, like that wide. My glands, you could actually feel like they were almost like in my neck, like too big. Wow, it was terrible. I couldn't breathe properly. I had a hard time, sleeping. I was propping up the pillow, so I was trying to sit up in bed because I kept choking, and I didn't know why, but I found out later, this is when I also found out in the after, that I had a severe case of sleep apnea as well. So while I'm sick and my throat's practically closed down from being so badly ill, and I'm running a high fever, I'm running the sleep apnea. So I sort of kept myself up most of that night. I went down to the next morning. I went down to work, and I have 4 people at my booth working. We have a pretty big booth there, like a quadruple booth we had. And they took one look at me and they said, "Bill, you got to get yourself to a doctor or hospital, something, So I went ahead. I remember going to the hospital. I remember, it's 31 years ago. I jumped in a taxi, I believe, that brought me over there. I got in the emergency room and it was so busy. It was too busy. So there was people walking around with clipboards and asking people if they wanted to go around because they had medical centers all over the city. And what they were doing was sending people out. So I said, I'll go. Because I wanted to be able to see and not wait 8 hours in the emergency room because it was a long wait. And they sent me to this medical clinic. They took me right in. They put me on a gurney. They took me right back. And they said my fluids were low. My oxygen levels were bad. I had a fever. I knew I had a fever because I was feeling hot and everything. So they were treating me all day with, IV. So they got IV going on, and now they're putting some fluids back in my body. They're rehydrating me. They're giving me electrolytes. They're coming around every once in a while and with the injection shot and shooting it into the terminal, into the IV terminal. So I asked them, what are you putting in there? And they told me, well, we're doing antibiotics at the same time because we're not sure what this is, actually. So I said, fine, load me up. I wanted as much as I could get at the time. Medical centers, the one thing about them is they close at about 7 o'clock at night. So I was there for hours already during the day. I must have went through about maybe 3 of the full bags of IV. And so I was well hydrated. They came up to me and, tested everything. They tested my oxygen levels again. They said, your oxygen levels are back up. You're well hydrated. Your fever's not that bad. So why don't you, what they told me is they told me to go back to my hotel where I was staying at. And if I felt the same way in the morning, they told me go directly to the hospital. So they gave me a bottle of antibiotic, bottle of pills, and they gave me an inhaler. to breathe. So I was exhausted from the night before and not sleeping. I was really tired, and I fell right off after I took the antibiotic. I physically remember, I'm about to tell you one of the most profound near-death experience stories maybe you've ever heard, because it's so detailed. I remember exactly how I left my body. I seen myself physically leave my body. My belief was that because I didn't know nothing about NDEs at the time. I was leaving through my eyes. I saw myself leave my body in this beautiful glowing mist. It was spectacular. It was spectacular. But the mist was like the color of a fern in spring, but magnified 100 times. It was beautiful. And now I remember floating above my body. I'm completely detached at this point, but I'm feeling so free and beautiful. And I'm in like this abyss of love. I feel nothing but this deep love like I've never felt. I never felt this kind of love before. And I remember hovering over my body for a while. And I didn't know this next part, but I sort of found this out through other people. They said that the soul stays around the body until it realizes the body is dead. The physical body is dead. Well, when my soul, my spirit recognized that body was physically dead, this beam of light came from behind, and the beam of light turned me. It physically turned me. I didn't do any turn by myself. I remember it drawing me right into this beautiful, I call it in my book, the gateway. Into this beautiful gateway, this beautiful tunnel of light and color and love. That's the only way I could explain the tunnel. But now I'm in this tunnel and I start to move, and I'm increasingly moving faster and faster. And as I move, I'm feeling more love, and the love is building within me, inside me. And I almost feel like I'm cradled, like someone's taking care of me on this trip, this journey. But I'm moving now at the speed of light, and I'm part of the physical light. It's whizzing by me so fast that I could see everything, all the colors. It looked like the universe, nebulas and things like that, but in a physical tunnel that was moving like this. And now I'm moving at these speeds, feeling loved and cradled. I'll never forget my arrival. My arrival was, I knew where I was. I said, I'm home. I'm finally home. Thank God. Thank God I'm home. And I said it over and over to myself. Now I'm speaking out loud. I remember hearing it clearly as a bell. And all of a sudden I hear the soft whisper in my ear, yes, Bill, you're home. You're home in the light of God. She introduced herself. My name is Antonia, and I'm one of your 3 guardians. She told me I had 3 guardians at the time. I'm in love at this point. I feel nothing but love. It's magnificent. I'm feeling like I'm home. I've been there before. I start to recognize people around, other spirit around me as feeling like a family, and different beautiful souls around me. And everything was like a collective of this beautiful combined light with different colors in it. It was magnificent. And she says, after she said, my name is Antonia, I'm one of your guardians. And she told me about, I have the 2 other guardians. She said, I was with you on your journey home. And then I said that's why I felt that protection. I said, well, thank God you were with me, because I don't think I would have been able to get through that. It was magnificent. And the next thing she says, one of your other guardians approaches, and this beam of light is walking towards me, and I'll never forget. And he said, hello, Billy. That was my brother's voice. I'm physically hearing my brother that passed away 16 years prior to that. No, sorry, I was 16 years old. So it was like 24 years prior to that. 24, 26 years prior. I haven't heard my brother's voice since then, but I knew it because he was the one that raised me. He was 30 years old at the time. He had a cancer. I was only 16. My dad was he was away from home because he was a president of of the UPS United Parcel Teamsters Union. So he was busy doing, different things all around the country and conventions and things like that. So my brother was the one that raised me. So we had this embrace. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was like two souls coming together. And it was that part was wonderful. At the embrace, I could feel the other souls around me. It felt like family and friends. Antonia said that this is your family and friends. And you actually feel the spirit. You hear the spirits. Collectively speaking, and you can understand several at a time. It doesn't have to be one soul, one spirit speaking to you. It's the telepathy part of that. Now, I felt that she was talking to me, that I could hear a physical language, but I could hear their voices in my mind. So it was that part was fascinating. And then Peter was just ecstatic. I was ecstatic. I was more ecstatic than ever. I'll never forget that first part. It was beautiful. And then Peter said, and Antonia said, it's time for your life review. So I remember being I didn't know what a life review was. And the next thing I know, they whisked me off. And I'm in this beautiful, illuminated area, just gorgeous. Heaven is a beautiful place. It feels like you're in the crystal cities I could explain it like that so we'll understand it. Understand it as crystal cities and golden roads and with diamonds, reflecting the universe off there. It was so magnificent. That part was absolutely beautiful. Peter said to me, your life review is starting. And Heather, it was like being if I could explain it, actual seeing it was like this beautiful, gigantic screen opens in front of me. And it was like flickering so fast. Like sometimes you saw in the olden days, the end of a movie reel and the movie would spin out. But we were the difference was we were physically part of that. So it brought us to every scene of my life, every major important scene. And what they did is they told me, we're going to show all the good you've ever done and all the wrong you've ever done. And I remember them showing me such beautiful things. They stopped me they stopped. So the flickering screen would run, and then it would stop. So as it stopped, it would slow down first and then stop, come to a full stop, and then we're standing there. We're standing in the scene when I was with my friends, taking them like we used to go to Coney Island or go to the movies sometimes. My mom owned a bar and grill across the street from Ebbets Field in Brooklyn, New York. So she did okay for herself, and she used to give me a little money and tell me, take your friends, because some of my friends, they didn't have, and we weren't rich by any means. We were just, I would say, upper middle. And that part was beautiful. So it showed me all the fun I had with my friends. And, they weren't taking advantage of me because I was paying. They would pay back in other ways. It was just beautiful friendships we had growing up. We had such a big crowd of friends. That was beautiful. They show you one good thing after another good thing. They take me to the part in the life review. They actually take me to the part when I first moved down to Miami from New York. I'll never forget this part. So the city had an ad in I think it was the Miami Herald, and they said, we're training EMT paramedics for the county because they were so short. They were going to add on 57 vehicles and that they needed people desperately. So they was willing to pay you as you worked at beginning as an attendant and go into medical school at night. And you went through a quick university of paramedic training. You went in and worked as an attendant alongside the two paramedics. So you would get on the job training too, which was fantastic. Then you would be the teacher that's how it would work. But I remember they showed me a scene where me and my partner, we pick up our vehicle downtown Miami, and we're heading up I-95. And we're on about 95th Street and I-95 heading north. And over the radio there's a 317 on 135th Street and I-95. So I hear they call our other unit, which is about 10 minutes away from there. So we had less than a minute ETA. So I just picked up the mic and said, call the other unit off. I said, this is 67F. We're going to take the call. We're right here. So they call the other unit off. We get to the call. Now I go grab the medical bag, and there's this kid's running around all of a sudden crying, and I see blood dripping down his face. So I go running down towards him, and he just sits down on the floor. And we got over to him. My partner and I are both looking at him, and he's not too bad. It looked like he just had little scratches on his face with little blood. He says, my sister like this. And I never forget this part. Me and Danny, we looked like this together over, and this girl's head was through the windshield all the way back to the back of her head here. So let me explain it. Half her head's inside the car, half her head's outside the car. Danny, I looked at her because in a head injury of that magnitude, there's so much blood that goes to the head that it was physically all over the place, and we had to assess it really quick. So, and a lot of times you're told to wait for the fire truck to come with the cutters. I said to Danny, we can't wait. He looked at me. He agreed. We had a 5-second assessment, right? 5 seconds. We were done. We got to get her off. He went in the car, sort of picked her up and edged her on his lap. And I went outside the car and handed him the top part of her head. We raced her over to the unit, put her in. Her brother hops in the back with me. This is something in my life review. They're showing me the whole thing exactly how it happened now. I remember I got her on the gurney. I have gauze pads in my hand. She's completely unconscious. I'm trying to wrap her head up. We're only about 2 miles from Parkway General Hospital at the time. I got the gauze pads in her head. Now her body starts to seize. Her body's physically jumping up on me. I got her head in my hand like this with the gauze pads down, but I can't control her. I remember turning around, yelling out, God help me. I was talking to the brother. And when I said, God help me in my life review, I saw my brother's Peter's hand come in on top of mine, on top of her head. This part still gives me the chills when I think about it. I mean, his physical hand, my brother Peter's hand came in on top of her head. I'll never forget this part. And then we arrived at Parkway. They were all ready. They knew we were coming. They run her right off into the operating room. So we look at each other, Danny and I, and, we're feeling very bad for the girl. Because, losing that kind of blood, and it was bad, to say the least. It was about the worst it could get. And the next morning, I woke him up an hour early. I said, Danny, come on, we got to go. He said, are you crazy? I said, no, I'm not crazy. He says, is it time to go? I said, no, but we got to go. We got to go I want to go to Parkway. I want to see what happened to that girl. And he said, Bill, she's dead. Just like that. Because with that amount of blood loss and that amount of injury, and we physically thought the window went through the cranium, the skull. So there would have been no life. Absolutely 100%. But I had this feeling that there was something there. Danny finally agreed with me to go because we were driving 6 miles out of our way and 6 miles coming back, and just out of our way mileage, and then going there and seeing her and everything. We got to Parkway General. I see one of the nurses in the emergency room that we knew. We knew most of the nurses from all the emergency rooms. And I said, Becky, what happened to that young lady we brought in yesterday? And she said, you want to meet her? I melted. I hugged Becky. She says, come on with me. She brought us up to the room. Me and Danny standing there. She's sitting up in bed with a big turban wrapped around her head. She's laughing at something she's watching on the screen because her brother's on the couch laying down. Her mother and father, they brought in another rollaway thing for them, are there. They wake up. The brother wakes up first, and he screams. The girl doesn't know who we are. Don't forget, she was out cold the whole time. Even when she was having the seizure, she was out cold. She has no idea who we are. The brother says, these are the men that saved your life. And then the whole room was ecstatic. But in the life review, they show you all the good, all the good, all the good, all the good like that, over and over again, all through. And that makes your spirit feel alive inside. You really feel good. But then they switch it on. And now they start showing you the wrong things you've done or bad things you've done in your life. And, you know, as teenagers and kids growing up, we all do stupid things. So, and some of them are bad and some of them are hurtful. And they showed me these little things. You know, I don't feel like I was a really bad person in my lifetime. I feel like I always had a good heart. But I did bad things. There's no doubt about it. Everybody has. And you feel those things. As they're showing you, you feel them one after another. I'm going to take you up to one real bad one that just brought my whole being completely emotional wreck. It took me to the part where I had left my first wife. We were married for 7 years. I left my first wife, and we had a young boy at the time. He was about 2.5 years old. And I got to feel the pain that they had, the emotion they had. I didn't feel it. Heather, I became their pain. I physically became the pain exactly the way they had it. And I don't know how to explain this because you can't physically become the pain here. You could feel bad for a person, or if you're an empath, sometimes you have that ability to feel the physical pain. But I physically became their pain of that. And I remember I'm almost screaming at the top of my lungs, I'm sorry. Please, God, forgive me. When I said I was sorry, and I asked God for forgiveness, all that grayness dropped. And the beauty about it, I'm standing there now alongside of Peter and Antonia. And Antonia says to me, Bill, look at yourself. Remember I told you I was like a free-floating mist being type of thing? Well, I became a beam of light. It was this beautiful beam, and now I look exactly like they do. I mean, I believe in my heart, I'm part of God now. I asked them, I'm going to say this a little early. I usually keep it till later, after Oren, my third guardian, is about to approach now, but I'm going to say this now. I said, are you the Holy Trinity? I asked them because at times I felt like I was speaking to God when I was there. And then Oren starts to appear. The glow of Oren was magnificent. Peter said, this is Oren. He's been with you your whole life. He is one of the great angels, God. I said, I know this. Peter says, well, he's been with you your whole life. He's your intuition. And then Oren introduced himself. They introduced themselves to you, and then you know that they've been with you. I always explain Oren like he's the little angel that sits on my shoulder and says, Bill, no, that's the wrong thing to do. See, when I was younger, I think I was 27 when I left my wife that time. I call those ages the young and dumb ages. We do stupid, crazy things, and you feel real bad for them afterwards. And I hope I've paid back my son, because we get along really well now. My first wife, God rest her soul, she passed away very young. But to get to Oren now, Oren's my guardian of intuition. Oren's been with me my whole life. I'm witnessing a man with amazing knowledge and wisdom within him. And this wisdom, remember I said you're consciously together? Your consciousness is a collective type of thing. So I'm feeling and seeing this wisdom while I'm with Oren. And Oren says, now we have to go one more level. And I remember saying, oh, where are we going? And they're taking me to some place that people call Akasha Records. I don't know what Akasha Records is at that time. Never heard of it in my life. So I called it in my book, because I wrote my first book back in, and I stuck with it before I knew even what Akasha Records was. I call it the Hall of Events. Because in the Hall of Events, they showed me things like you couldn't imagine. They showed me the past. These are major events they're showing me now. Some having to do with my life, but most not having to do with my life. I'm talking about major events like wars, different things like that, all along the sequence of my life path. And we got into this theater now, and this feels like this is different from where we just were. We were just in an illuminated area. Now we're in this beautiful crystal theater. And on the crystals, the crystals are reflecting the universe. The universe is combustion. It's showing you how life begins. It showed me everything, how life starts. It was magnificently beautiful. And you could see the nebulous through the crystals reflecting off wide pieces of crystal. I'm not talking about little crystals like people wear. It's almost like trees of crystal. It was beautiful. And then Oren says to me, the event process is starting. So they take me back now. They take me back somewhere. I don't know where, because I don't know this part in history, because I wasn't born yet, but they must have taken me to either World War II. I didn't know where I was. I was in the Pacific somewhere. I know that. But it could have been the Korean War too. I wasn't sure. Korean War ended. World War II ended in 45, and the Korean War ended in 52. I was born in 52, but I don't remember anything from that war. But I have family in that war. But now I ask myself, could I have been there? They took me to a sequence during the war that happened that I was familiar with. Then that was on. Then we were moving. I actually seen they slowed down as it worked the same way that it did. It worked exactly the same way that it did in my life review, a flickering type of a screen. You're in the screen, then you're stop and you're part of the physical scene. It slowed down. I seen my birth happening, my physical birth happening. Then it goes on. I remember it slowing down again and stopping, totally stopping this time. And it stops in 1963. It shows me and all my class sitting in the classroom, and over the loudspeaker, we just, the principal never comes on in midday. He usually comes on in the morning, made his announcement, and that was all you heard from him the whole day. Well, he comes on in the early afternoon, I believe, or the late morning, and he said, this was November 1963. He said, JFK, John F. Kennedy, was just shot in Dallas, Texas. And now I'm seeing sequences of the shooting. This whole of events was incredible. And then we're moving again. We're moving again, and it's moving fast through sequences of things that happened all along my life path. But major events, like I said, not much to do with mine. The next one it physically stopped at was the end of the Vietnamese War. We physically stopped on, I thought we were anyway. We were in spirit, but it looked like at this time, it looked like we're in body form. So we feel like we're in body form and look like we're in body form. We're all standing next to me. They look younger than me. They're in that 30s. Meanwhile, the Oren might be tens of thousands of years old. I have no idea. But we're physically standing, watching the last helicopters leave from the top of and thousands of people around trying to escape Vietnam at the time. And I remember that sequence because it brought back memories of my lifetime. So that was incredible, that part. And now we're moving again. Now it shows me the time. Goes past my birth, goes right up to 9/11. Now don't forget, we're in 1994. I don't know what 9/11 is. I don't even know if it was real. But I'm at the front of the Twin Towers. I knew the Twin Towers good. I was in those buildings all the time. I had, many friends working there. And I remember stopping after that plane hit the building. I remember stopping and it's all black ash. Everything is collapsing. People are running frantically. They're running frantically. And then I start to run. And then Oren grabs my arm. Even though I said we're physical body now, Oren grabs my arm. Now, this is the crazy thing, Billy. He said, Billy, you can't do anything. I said, my friends, they're in the building. He says, you can't do anything. You're not here. Now it's all black. It's all ash. He says, what do you see, Bill? And I look around, I see everything. I see through the building, inside the building. I see people running in the street as clear as bell. He says to me, what do you think they see? It's black. I says, I don't know, Oren. He says, could you see? I says, I see everything. He says, Bill, what do you feel with all this stuff dropping around us? I says, I don't feel anything. So again, he repeated. He says, we're not here. This is a future event. I said, this can't be. I remember saying this can't be. And the next thing you know, it's moving again. And then we stop. There's two more stops here. It's incredible, the last part. The one stop must have been Baghdad, because it must have been a couple of years after that, because we stopped where they were bombing at. And the only way I refer it to Baghdad, like in 2003 or 4, whenever it was, that I remember the way the people were dressed, and I remember the way the buildings looked. And there was bombs going off all around us. And when the bombs were going off next to me, I was instinctively running again. And again, they told me, I don't have to run. You don't have to run. Now, this is the final part. They take me to what I believe are these times today. Physically, I believe these times today, because everything coincides. In my first book that I started writing in 1999, 2000, I had it documented, and I didn't get it published till 2012, but it was copyrighted in 2001, 2002. And I was talking a lot about the AI of today, what's going to happen to us. I talked all about that, and I wrote that back in 2000, 2001, but I wrote that and expressed that there was going to be a massive amount of job loss, because I didn't know at the time that we were going to become a half robotic world, but we are now that we see it. And I seen it all back then. But the thing that unfolded at the end, they took me to 2 planes at the end. 2 different planes. We didn't move in the screen this time. They just whisked me off and took me to a place that was so horrible, Heather. It would make you cry. You've seen people living off each other. They would kill for a bottle of water. You've seen cities burning. I've seen this in the Hall of Events. I said, what is this? Is this the end of the world? The cities were burning. I mean, people that were left were just surviving, but they weren't living. It was no life. It was so scary. It was a terrible, terrible feeling. And I'll never forget it, because they would do anything, like I said, for water or food, life meant nothing to these people at the time. And that's what I don't want this to turn into now. Then they showed me another plane, one more plane of utopia. Now, they take me from this total disaster, cities burning, people living off each other, no water, no food, no nothing, into this beautiful utopian area that people are caring, service, loving, giving of themselves more and more and more. And they said to me, Bill, you have choices. I didn't know what they meant. I didn't know what they meant. I know what they mean now. I didn't know what they mean back then. I didn't know what they meant at all back then. But he says, God gives the human being one thing they're allowed to take with them when they cross over, and that's choice. So what do you do? I don't know what to do. We were passing planes in between. So what I'm hoping for, I didn't know what those other planes were like because they just told me two scenarios. They told me the absolute worst it could possibly be, and they showed me the best it possibly could be. And I just hope maybe we wind up in the middle somewhere, because it would be real hard now to turn this world into something like I would love to see. Yeah, so they showed me that. And then Oren says to me, this is what you must bring with you. Now, I don't know what he meant by bring with you, okay? So he says, one more final. And I said, what do you mean end? He says, it's one other thing. So they take me to a different place now of angels, these illuminated, beautiful white angels alongside the crystals. And there's so much knowledge within these angels. And this knowledge is pouring, physically pouring in me. They showed me these principles. They give me, my book is called The Ninth Level of Enlightenment, but they give me these 9 beautiful, wonderful, caring, faithful principles of life. And they implanted them in my mind. So these are principles of enlightenment that we must live by. There's principles of service. There's principles of intuition. There's principles of love. The first principle is a big one that we all know because it's very familiar to us. So the first one in the 10 Commandments. You should not take anyone else's life. And that means ever. The reason why is a little different than we know here. The reason why they explain to me is you cannot interfere with anyone else's life path because you don't know what their ancestry might bring. You have no vision of what that might happen. Back when I first started doing these things, I used to say the cure for cancer, but they're pretty close to that now. So that's a wonderful thing. I said their grandson might have made the real cure for cancer, and that's how they explained it to me. So we weren't allowed to take anybody's life, nor were they allowed to take yours. So you were allowed to self-defend yourself if anything like that happened. And then one other angel comes up to me. He physically comes right, I could say literally, into me, because remember, I told you it's like a collective. And he shows me this number sequence that looks exactly or very similar. Let's say the only difference is these were floating crystals floating down. These numbers with symbols floating down in front of me in rows and rows of numbers. And certain numbers would light, like the 1s, the 8s, the 3, the 6, the 9s. They would all light bright. So I remember those numbers. I remember those numbers clearly. Now they explain those numbers as these particular numbers, they control our whole immediate universal system. These are distances between the sun, the moon, the earth. They arrange our tides, our seasons. Without these particular numbers, this is advanced stuff. I never heard of anything like this in my life. Without these numbers, they explained to me, we would not exist. Earth would not exist. So also one of the 9 principles, the 9th principle, is the love of Mother Earth itself. Mother Earth is a spirit. She's alive. She actually gives us the oxygen we breathe. She gives us the water we drink through her rivers. Without Mother Earth, we don't exist. So we also have to take care of her. She's at a high rung on the ladder. There's 8 rungs of love, 8 ladder steps of love in one of those principles. So it's amazing. The principles actually take pages and pages to go over, so I won't go over all of them. But those are a few of them. The intuition is very, very important. Principles of choice is very, very important. These are things to really pay attention to. I show people in the book how to recognize your intuition versus an idea. All right. I show people things like that so they understand, because there's a difference, and you have to know the difference to understand it. So after they explained to me about that's the control on Mother Earth, he says to me 2 things that were personal. He says to me, you have a life path number. A life path number. In my mind, I don't have any idea what that is. He says, my life path number is number 3. I'll be honest with you, Heather, I didn't know what a life path number was till 2015. I never even thought of looking it up. I just kept the 3 in my mind all the time. My life path number is 3. And that's easy to find out and look up. You could just investigate, angel life path numbers, number 3. How do you find out your life path number? It tells you exactly how to do it for your audience, so they can look that up, because everyone has a life path number. And then he says you have an alert sign. And he says your alert numbers are 6 and 6. Well, that wasn't new to me. I knew those numbers. I had that numbers in my head from when I was a kid. And every time I had those numbers, something would happen. Like before my brother died, I knew he was sick for a while, but I knew the night he was dying, because those numbers appeared to me that day at least 10 times in different forms. Either I was at an exit, because I used to drive out to Long Island from Brooklyn, and I'm at exit 66. Or I look at the clock and it's 6:06. I put on the radio and it says something about 66 on it. It's just amazing. I've had this my whole life come to me in different times in my life. And every single time in my life, it didn't mean something bad was going to happen to you either, because sometimes it could be very good. So it was basically like they explained to me. It was an alert sign. And he says that prayer is your phone line to heaven. Well, I said, I'm part of love now. I'm part of God. I remember that. And he left, and this beautiful spirit approaches me, and this is the end. And she says, you have the understanding of the 9 principles of enlightenment. I says, yes, I understand. She says, you must return. Well, I said, no, I'm love now. I'm a part of love. I've been through my life review. I'm exactly like you are. This young, beautiful spirit says to me again, you must return. I fought and argued and begged and pleaded. I'll never forget this. I fought, argued, begged, and pleaded to stay. I didn't want to come back here. By this time, because other than in my life review and other in my, it's really a little different once you get in the metaphysical. Because other in your life review and in the whole of events is the only time you saw yourself back in your body and remembered that body at home. You have your family there, yes. But your family has been your family for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Our spirit circles follow each other through the centuries. The beauty about this whole thing is, at the last time she said it, this is the 3rd time, you must return. She says, I'm 6 of 6. And the next thing I know, I'm being poured. I'm being pulled. And it felt like I'm in a vortex being pulled back. Dude, nothing like going. Nothing like going. Right now, I'm starting to feel like a rag doll, almost like I'm pulling back. And I remember being slammed back into my body in bed. And the only thing that moved when I was slammed was my throat lifted up. Because I took this breath that I can't explain. Must be like you'd be underwater for a half hour. I took this breath to get in air, and my neck was up in the air. I couldn't move my body. I thought I was completely paralyzed in bed, but my throat moved and I could breathe. And all I had at this time were thoughts of the other side. I said, why am I back? And now I can't move. I thought I was paralyzed. Well, I'll tell you, it must have only been a couple of minutes, but it felt like for me, it felt like an eternity. It literally felt like it was an hour, but it wasn't. It was probably a couple of minutes. When I started, you know how when you fall asleep on something, on your arm or your leg, and it's completely dead? That's how my whole body felt. So my whole body felt that way. Finally, after what was probably really only a couple of minutes, I started getting tingles all down my arms and my legs, and I got enough to reach over. I remember reaching over, grabbing the phone and picking it up and saying, I need help, send one of my people over. And I sort of passed out at that time. I don't know what happened. They got me to the hospital. I woke up in the hospital. I remember them waking up in the hospital, disoriented, remembering very clearly what happened to me, being totally afraid to say anything about it. Because what was I going to say? It was 1994. I didn't even know what a near-death experience was. What are these doctors going to think if I tell them this? So this gets really interesting, this last part. This is the final part. After I rest for several days over there, after they treat me, I flew back to Florida. I was afraid to even tell my wife. Finally, I got enough guts up to tell my wife what happened, because I didn't want her thinking that something was wrong with me. And she was very good about it. She told me, I think, after I told her the whole story like this, she says, I think you should go to Dr. Vasquez. Now, Dr. Vasquez was with me since I was a paramedic back in those days. She says, tell him what happened. Well, thank God I went to Dr. Vasquez, because I think if I went to another doctor, the same outcome would have never came out of this thing. I went to my doctor's office that day, set up an appointment. I went in. He says, what are you here for? At first I said, it's my annual checkup. It wasn't my annual checkup. I was there just to try to find out what happened. So he gives me the whole examination. You know, he draws blood. He says, well, I'm going to take your blood and everything and do the whole workup. He even took a chest x-ray, because he had, back in those days, the doctors had x-ray machines in their office. He took a chest x-ray because I told him how sick I was, over there. He wanted to make sure I didn't have any pneumonia and or something left over from the pneumonia. After that, I said, Dr. Vasquez, can I talk to you? He says, well, sure, Bill. He says, is it medical or is it physical? Well, I said, well, it's a little both. He says, well, follow me. He takes me back in the office. I'm sitting there. He says, just let me arrange stuff. He's arranging some of the stuff he had to finish up with. So he says, you're lucky you caught me at the end of the day. I said, thank God. I said, because I'm about to tell you something now. And I just let loose on him. And I told him this whole thing, and he just stood there and he listened to every single thing I said. And then when I was finished, he just stood there and looked at me. And now I was afraid, well, he either thinks I'm crazy or something else. He says, Bill, he says, I don't want you to be nervous about this. I want you to know that you had an experience. I says, well, what are you talking about? He says, well, I'm almost 100% sure. But he says, I want to do one more test. So he takes me in the room, medical room again. He whips out an electrical cardiogram machine and another machine. And those are the days they had the tapes. They looked like ticker tapes, the long tapes. They used to read them. You probably remember that, Heather, because they did that up until 2000 something, right? They would read the tapes on the electrical cardiogram of the machine. And every time he'd look at me like that, and he'd tape again, and he'd look up at me again like that, and he'd look up at me. And finally, after a whole stack of tapes were on the ground, he says, come back here. He didn't even put the machines away. He said, just come back here. He says, sit down. He said, Bill, you just told me the same exact story that 7 of my patients told me before. He says, now some of them varied somewhat, but he says, these were the circumstances. He says, the ones that died in the hospital, the ones that physically died in the hospital, he said, they only usually got to the abyss part. He says, because they were defibrillated very quickly and they were brought back. So I said, what are you talking about? He said, this is called that experience again, he tells me. I said, what are you trying to tell me? He says, you were dead, Bill. He says, your cardiogram even shows. He said, when was your major heart attack? I said, I didn't have a heart attack. I never had a heart attack. I said, you know that. You've been my doctor my whole life. He said, Bill, you had a major heart attack. And that was the night of my near-death experience. And that's the story.
Wow.
One more thing.
Yes.
One more thing. I'll leave this for last. Remember when I told you that 6 of 6 little spirit told me at the end? I had a boy in my wife's belly when I was at that show. That's the only reason why she wasn't with me working at that show. He was about to be born in the following September. My wife had the morning sickness terribly, so she couldn't come with me in February. I had an older son. Today is 47, I think. I never had a daughter. My daughter that's with me today is 25 years old. She just turned 25. She was born in 2000. She was born on the 6th day of the 6th month, June the 6th of 2066. That's the story.
Everything that you shared, Bill, is just so wildly incredible. And
there's a lot of detail.
Oh, there is. And there's a lot that I still want to find out more about. I generally like to keep them all in one episode. I've been trying that lately, but I really want to take this into part 2 so we have more time to really dig into stuff. So if that's okay with you, let's go ahead and talk more in part 2.
Yeah, okay.
I just loved meeting Bill a couple of weeks ago, and I loved sharing his story with you today. But as you noticed, there is more. I don't always like to break it down into 2 parts, but boy, there was just so much. I couldn't share it in just an hour. And if you are interested in potential future events, this is one you're going to want to listen to.
What I witnessed myself was terrible. The first plane they took me to was a terrible situation. I felt like I was back in my old city where I used to live. I felt like I was back in New York. And fires all over the place, buildings destroyed and things like that. I saw this. Now, I'm not sure of the exact city because it just looked like buildings and destruction.
How widespread? I mean, you said some buildings were down.
It was the whole city. It was the whole city. Utopia. It's magnificent. There's nothing that could compare with that because all I've seen there, and we let me witness for quite a while, it felt like. I felt all the good of humanity. Anything possibly that was good. I felt the service. I saw the kindness. I saw all these people giving and not taking, and just all the love that had to do with it.
Okay, so that is coming up. We really go in depth on potential events, both good and bad, and could we fall somewhere in between? So we've got a really great discussion on that. I do hope you'll come back for that. It is so interesting. In the meantime, what did you think about the things that we covered in this episode. There were a lot of things that stood out to me, and I'd love to know what stood out to you. So please write that in the comments. Just a couple of things from me. It was really reassuring that he met his brother there. I think that is reassuring to a lot of us that have lost a loved one, that he was greeted by his brother. And then the life review. I think that really stood out to me because he had a lot of regret over how he had treated his first wife. And I think there's a lot of people out there that maybe need to hear that when they've felt like they've been wronged, that the other person's going to know and they're going to feel it, and they are going to feel horribly that they did that. And also, of course, it makes us want to live a life where we are not hurting people. So there was so much to that. So please share your thoughts, whatever they are, on that or something else. Also, if you could give it a like, if you enjoyed it, please do that and share it with a friend. Maybe you have a friend who this really would hit home with. Please do share that. I will have all of Bill's information in the description, and also a link to his book and, of course, his bio information there too. And we discussed IANDS. So I'll have a link to IANDS. It's IANDS.org, but I'll put it in the description. And again, if you are interested in the conference, it really is a great time. I will be there. Bill's going to be there. Make sure you come say hello. It really is a wonderful experience. And I have a feeling that if you do decide to go, if you have the opportunity to go, that you'll go, wow, this was just awesome. I can't wait to go again next year. But you can find out more information on that in the description, on the conference on any year. So if you're watching this years down the line, you'll find the same website will bring you to conference news for whatever year it is. So that'll be there. And of course, I'll have a link to all of my past episodes. While you're waiting for the next one, please listen to one of my others. There's so many great guests, and I always learn something from each one of them, and hopefully all of you will as well. I think that Bill's episode is going to be really interesting. So I do hope that a lot of you will come back for that. Remember the release date and the link when it comes out. That'll all be in the description. Have a great day, everybody. I hope I'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to Beyond with Heather Tesch to look for more episodes.